I wanted today to I wanted to have a conversation with you. I'm not going to give a formal sermon. I'm going to give more of a teaching that I hope that you'll participate in. And I wanted to talk all about how Pesach is a holiday of nostalgia. So I want to hear from you first. What could you think of as part of this holiday that is in the category of nostalgic or nostalgia? Anybody? This is where you raise your hand, you then say a thing, I repeat it. Yes. Great, amazing. Using pots and pans and dishes from a generation before us, or maybe even multiple generations before us. Essie, we're going to say something? Great, so watching other people do something that maybe at the time you didn't even know why you were doing it, but now in our own lives, either we still do it or at least we think about why they might have done it. So with this particular man tying his utensils together, probably so he didn't burn his hands going into the boiling water to kosher. Yeah. Great. Right, so this feeling of continuity, both in what we do, but also, and you did not say this, but I'm going to add it, in the story that we tell, right? That it passes down from generations, and once we were the grandchildren, and now some of us are the grandparents, doing the same things that the generations before us did so that we could celebrate Pesach all together. Great. Anything else? Yeah. Great. Great. The menu and the smells. Does anybody have like a particular, when you think of Pesach, you can think of a smell, a particular smell in your house? Yeah, it's amazing to see the kids raising their hands, right? There is this idea of what things smell like, whether that's actual food or that's things coming out of a cupboard that you only use once a year, right? There is something about bringing things out and being in the presence of those things that brings us back to a time of celebrating this either the year before or multiple years before. Was there another hand? Yeah. Horseradish. Do you want to tell us 3 more sentences about that? Oh, amazing. Wow. Amazing. So Deb just shared that there is nostalgia for her, particularly around horseradish, because her dad used to grate it, and so she decided, in his memory and in his honor, I'm sure, to do that this year when he was not able to do so for the family. So perfect timing. We're about to pass out a source sheet. I only made 35 copies, so thank you for proving me wrong in that respect. I mistakenly did not take out God's name in these, so please do not take them home with you. I will dispose of them. Brian, do you mind helping me pass it? So maybe one for every 2 people. So if you came with someone, you can share. Okay. So with this idea of nostalgia in our minds, of how Pesach is a holiday that centers around nostalgia, I'm going to bring in 3 excerpts from a written sermon that Rabbi Mark Katz wrote, and I gave you the link at the bottom here. I'm also happy to send it to you if you'd like. Specifically actually about Parshat Pinchas, not about this week's Parsha or even this holiday, but just this idea of thinking of nostalgia as a part of our tradition, both how we look into the tradition and also how we then end up practicing it out into the world. So we talked a lot about these things, but Passover is this holiday of remembering how to kosher our homes, of different smells, of different dishes, even what foods to buy, right? How many of you bought foods that on day 7 you still haven't eaten, but you felt at the beginning of Pesach you had to buy them? Yeah, right. Okay, great. That wasn't because you thought you were going to starve. That was because it was nostalgic for you to see that really bad cereal that they sell for Pesach, and you felt the need to have it even though you'll probably never open it. So that is not coming from a place of needing these things. And I would argue that the way in which we talk about Pesach and we even teach at the Seder is not out of need, it's out of nostalgia. It's out of us needing a holiday before we receive the Torah, by the way, right? The next holiday is where we receive the Torah. But this is a holiday where we need to be able to go back to the things that ground us, that root us in who we are, both individually and communally and traditionally, and then be able to make our way into freedom, so to speak. Okay. So let's look at this first three sentences by Rabbi Mark Schatz. Nostalgia is the amalgam of two Greek words, nostos, which means going home, and algos, which means pain. Thought often as a love for the past, but in fact it is much more insidious. Turning backwards is itself a traumatic process. What is this first box telling us about Pesach? Or illustrating for us about Pesach?
Memory.
Great. So there are aspects of memory. What else is there? Opportunity? Did someone just say that? Drama. Trauma or drama? Trauma. And drama. Yeah. Great. What else is this telling us about Pesach, this particular box? Great. We're focusing on the past. And in a very literal sense, the first sentence, going home and then pain. Right? We didn't leave Egypt thinking, wow, this is going to be so great and so easy and we're so prepared. Right? In one of the verses from the Torah that we're about to read, the people almost immediately receive their freedom and start to kvetch because they don't understand how to be free. Right? And we've all been there. We've all done something that is difficult and been excited to remove ourselves from it, but in a sense still miss that thing that we knew even though it was difficult. So even though we were yearning for freedom and very glad to get out of slavery, there was an aspect of slavery that was known and an aspect of freedom that was not. And that made it scary. Bobby, do you have a hand? Interesting. Yeah, great. So Bobby said it feels and sounds a little bit like group therapy. To be like at a Seder table and to be talking about all this and going through all the traumas and then talking our way through them. And it is sort of that. And it seems, at least according to Rabbi Schatz, that there are aspects of what Bobby might be thinking of as group therapy, which actually is the way that we experience nostalgia generally, right? It's the way that we think about things that are nostalgic to us. So in what we read today in Parshat Beshalach, the first verse of this parsha is Vayehi Beshalach Paro et ha'am velo nacham Elohim. So when Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them derech eretz Plishtim, by the way of the Philistines, ki karov hu, because even though it was closer, there was this idea that God had pen yinachem ha'am birotam milchama v'shavu mitzrayma. God already had this idea that if the people see what's going on in a similar, quicker route, that they might actually want to return back to Egypt. So what's that telling us about this freedom experience or this way out? What was God already aware of? Okay, there might have been a lack of commitment. The people were not yet committed to actually making this journey. What else? Yeah. Great. It was a scary process. And so what? What was God thinking? What were the people potentially going to do? Turn around, right? Okay, slavery was pretty bad, but maybe we should go back because at least we know that. We know that world. We don't know this war world that we're going into. Rabbi Tony.
There are many things that could have been shown to the people immediately after leaving Egypt.
Yeah.
So we know, as the story tells us, God, first thing, shows them Torah.
Yeah.
49 days later. God could have showed them war first.
Uh-huh.
Showed them all sorts of different things.
Uh-huh.
And to cultivate a free people, you got to choose carefully what you're going to show them first when they come out. So showing them war would have created a kind of stuntedness for the people.
Interesting.
And so God says, let's not show them war first thing when they get out, let's show them Torah.
Nice. Okay, so Rabbi Chorny, and he says much more beautifully than I will succinctly, but this idea that the people, as soon as they get out, as soon as they are free, they need to be shown something that we want them to follow. So if they're shown war first, Rabbi Chorny used the word they could have been stunted then to see war as the thing that they would need to follow or exemplify or continue on. And so instead they are shown Torah first. Okay. So the next part of Rabbi Katz's piece here is that he says nostalgia pulls us backward. It is emotionally satisfying and perhaps even at times uplifting, but it's also a drug that quickly becomes toxic. Why? Because we mistakenly believe that the past is known and the future is uncertain. So this specifically speaks, again, he's not doing this, I'm doing this, he's talking about Parshat Pinchas, but this specifically speaks to what the people were feeling when they left Egypt, when they left slavery. And we know, because we've seen the movie before, we know that good things are coming. But they don't know that. They know what they had. They don't know what is coming to them. So part of that and part of how we experience nostalgia, if you're nostalgic about anything, not just Pesach, is that being in a moment that is unknown, both the present moment and also the future moments, is harder than knowing what came before you, even if that was not easy. Yeah. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. There is an aspect of this story, right, where we focus in on the wonderful things that happen to us to get to the freedom. And I would venture to say that freedom has already entered into the conversation, because how can we be nostalgic if we haven't experienced that there was this amazing thing to come out of the freedom that we then ended up feeling comfortable being in, right, and feeling and not needing to go back to slavery. So you're right that this is a holiday where we celebrate our freedom. And I think yeah, right, exactly, yeah. Okay, so not in this day's Torah reading, but in the next part of the story, we're going to hear from chapter 16, verse 3 of Exodus. I'm just going to read in the English to go through it quickly. The Israelites said to them, "If only we had died by the hand of God in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots, when we ate our fill of bread, for you have brought us out into this wilderness to starve this whole congregation to death." Okay, so this is what we were talking about before, right? Slavery was really bad, but they're very nervous that they don't recognize the food, they don't see any water, they don't know what's going to come next to them. And so they're worried that they left something that they knew, and that, by the way, they were taken care of. It was terrible, right? And they were doing things that no human being should have to do, but they at least knew where to get their water, or that it was going to come to them at some point, right? And so what we're seeing here in the Torah is that immediately the people were feeling nervous, and rightfully so, not knowing what was going to come next. So Rabbi Katz says, nostalgia always involves pain. It is possible to yearn for the past, but one can never hope for it. Hope is reserved for what will be, that bright light shining forth, guiding our way into tomorrow. So I think that when we are sitting at our seders and when we are practicing 8 days of Pesach, and we are thinking about why we do this, freedom, liberation, our grandparents did, the guy with the utensils, oh, she's not here anymore, with the string did, right? There are reasons that we still do this, and some of it is rooted in halacha, some of it is rooted in law and in Torah, and in the way in which we are told that we are to practice this holiday. And some of it is rooted in because I saw my parents do this, and because I know that this was meaningful to my people, and because I want to celebrate my liberation by reflecting back on a moment that it wasn't a given, that liberation was going to be easy for me and easy for my people. Turn the page very quickly. We're not going to go through all the sources that are on the page here. And this is for sure not an exhaustive list of all of the moments in the Haggadah that that could relate us back to nostalgia, but I just want to point out what these three are. And again, we're not going to read through all of them. The first one is Vehi She'amda, which Cantor Chorny just used as the tune for Lador Vador, right? Yeah. And the text here is not just saying that this happened once, and so we should have a holiday so that we remember that this happened. This text is saying very clearly this is going to happen to us in every generation. And we need to remember what happened in the generation before. And again, to Rabbi Katz's point, not because it's easy or we should feel victorious, but there is some pain, there is some concern, and that's why we hold on to it to make sure that we understand what, if anything, is coming next that will be a challenge, how we can make our way through it. That's in the Haggadah. This next piece refers to all of the days of our life. And as you'll see if you read through the text word for word, it's not just talking about all the days of this life. It's not just talking about morning. It's not just talking about evening. It's talking about this life, the world to come, anytime you're awake, anytime you're asleep, that we should have this memory, this recognition of holding on to this story of our Exodus, because that's what's going to allow us to move forward through our own freedoms. And the last one is Avadim Hayinu, which I think is probably the clearest of these examples, which is that we are not just supposed to celebrate our freedom. We are supposed to literally put ourselves, maybe not literally, figuratively put ourselves in the feeling of being slaves. Because we were once slaves. Unfortunately, we live in a world in which there are people who are still feeling this type of slavery. This is not just in the past. But the beauty in the nostalgia is that we can think about what from that experience has allowed us to do all the things that we mentioned at the beginning. All the things that are allowing us to move forward with the joy and the celebration, with, of course, the hopes that this doesn't continue, but knowing, according to some of these texts, that it can, and that because we have done it before, we will know how to find ourselves in freedom. I put 3 things on the bottom here for you that I hope over the next 24 hours, 36 hours, you'll think about as a way to end this Pesach, and that I hope that you will bring into the next Pesach and the many, many more to come in your lifetime. These are just the 3 categories of nostalgia, the word that we use that comes from this Greek combination of words. But these are the 3 principles of just general nostalgia, not of Passover. But I think you'll find that it would be very easy to map these 3 things onto how we celebrate this holiday, and how I hope you will continue to until tomorrow night, and then for many years to come. I hope that you will share memories, both of the story of our people, but also of your own Mitzrayim and of your own freedoms. I hope that you will recognize ways that this holiday allows us to reconnect with our identity, both as individuals and also as a community. And I hope that you find meaning in change, because nostalgia does not just mean living in our history. It means recognizing the parts of our history that are going to allow us to find freedom in the future.